Expanding reality.
Welcoming to the show, James Sanger. So cool to see you, my friend. This is going to be an incredibly cool conversation with shout-outs to our connection going to Ben Tejada Ingram. That man sent me a string of amazing screenshots of messages of things that you were saying on many platforms. Ben, of course, there we go. The Last Dinosaur, The Lost World, My Search for Little Nessie, and The Lands Forgotten by Time. These are his books, so thank you, Ben. There's your shout out. He sent me a bunch of really interesting things of back and forth questions you were answering that he was asking, and I was fascinated by what you were doing, what you were talking about, and had to get you on. And so here we are. We had a call. It was an amazing call. And so, ladies and gentlemen, James Sanger, how are you, brother?
I'm feeling actually really good, thank you very much. And yes, it was, I didn't realize how many, where that AMA on Reddit would lead. And it led to the right ears, because you never know when you send something out who's going to pick up on what you say. And who, and it was very, very soon I realized that, Ben was really interested, and, he's called Anomaly Hunter as well, isn't he?
Yeah,
So,
Anomaly Hunter X, you got it.
Yeah, and so I loved, he was really getting the vibe, because a lot of what I was talking about is like quite obtruse, subtle, but very complicated sides of seemingly different scientific phenomenon, which coincide in such a way that you can do crazy stuff, but no one has put it together yet in a way that is in quite the same way that we did back in 1988, 89, and then going forward. And obviously your listeners won't have read the thread, but we feel like we can't prove it, and it's just an idea, and it might the fashionable thing to say on TikTok is this is just for entertainment purposes only. But we believe that it was kind of taken over by an organization, an American three-letter agency, when they realized the potential of what we were doing. And us, the hippies, who actually thought of the idea and actually were kind of doing it, were kind of dispossessed of our project, rather ingloriously, in that our boat was sunk, and it was really sunk. We lost a lot of stuff, but we didn't lose something that they really wanted, and that involved a kind of cat and mouse operation involving all sorts of skullduggery to get out of Hawaii back into the UK, and the stuff that they didn't get. Let's just say they might have got a copy of it, but they didn't get the original. Yeah.
Well, kudos first and foremost for using Skullduggery so appropriately and amazingly. It's first on the show, and we appreciate that. Dude, James, this is going to be deep. You and I are going to pull this stuff apart. I'm very excited about it, but I also want to remind the audience that all the ways to find him are going to be linked below, which will include how to find that thread. So definitely check that out down there. I want to also, before we get ramped into this fascinating conversation, you guys are going to love this, I want to point out our creative expansion artist, Sheldon Stehman. He is down in the show description down there as well under Flash Glass Mosaic. This dude on Instagram popped out. I was like, holy shit, dude. Turns out also, guys, spoiler alert, he's amazing. And funny and cool and awesome. So go check him out down there in the show description. And for you audio only audience, we appreciate you. If you're interested, check the video version linked down there in the show description, and you can come hang out and watch him create this incredibly cool piece. That behind the scenes here, he said that he's been wanting to for a while, and so this was the perfect opportunity. So there's also sort of closing an open tab for this man spiritually here as well, which is an amazing thing to be a part of. What do you think about all that, James?
Yeah, that's really cool to have somebody make something while we're talking about something. It's really well, I mean, I lived a life of art and creativity, having been uh, Brian Eno's assistant for a while, and learned a lot about bringing the creative side out of people. It's what I consider my job to be. It's like I'm an artist developer. So, um, I'm very in tune with that. I in fact. The first thing I do when I have artists in my studio that I'm developing is get them to make a kind of collage out of anything from like scrubbed up bits of paper to cut out bits of newspaper and magazines, and just to give an idea of who they are as artists. And it's not too dissimilar to making like a mosaic, beautiful mosaic or whatever it is. Art and music is very closely linked. It is an art.
Dude, 100%, 100%. And that's a beautiful segue to let's get into some of your background. I see the awards behind you there, and I've got to be honest, the American in me sees one of those. It's a bunch of stacked CDs, but my mind immediately wants a chocolate cupcake. And people in the video version will know what I'm talking about. Born in a certain era. But what are those plaques on the wall behind you, and let's get into your background a little bit.
Okay, well, basically, I was an artist, and I released quite a few records as an artist when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And I also was doing the whole thing with the discovery of the Lucy scale with Charles Lucy, and discovering that whales, birds, and dolphins communicate in the Lucy scale. So that's where two kind of different lives developed. I had the one was a scientific academic life where we were doing the kind of mammalian communication and interspecies communication research stuff, which is what I think your friend kind of picked up on a lot. But at the same time as that, I also was, I first of all was making records, and then actually Brian Ferry from Roxy Music heard one of my records on BBC Radio 1, and he really liked it. And he tracked me down, and he got his management to ask me whether I would like to come to the studio to kind of show him how I kind of made those crazy sounds on the record. At that time, music program wasn't really well known, and it was something that he was really interested in kind of getting into his records. And I was honored to be invited to a studio. And it was a gig, really. It started out as one day, and then he said, would you mind coming tomorrow as well? And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love it. It'd be great. And that turned into a week, and a week turned into a month. And next thing I know, I'm doing sessions with him with like, David Stewart, Sinead O'Connor, David Gilmour, and then Brian Eno. And Brian Eno came along, and he was my hero. I really liked ambient music, and I was really into what he was doing, and he was like, I very nearly messed that gig up. You'll find my whole story about how I snatched success from the jaws to defeat in getting that gig, because I very nearly finished that gig with Brian Eno thinking I was a complete moron. Yeah, I really did. I was really lucky on that gig because I managed to save that gig by showing him that I actually knew what I was doing. Because at the beginning, it really started badly because I messed up his really famous and treasured synthesizer. But I was able to show how I could fix it. I took it away for a weekend and I kind of found out what had happened and I fixed it. And then I took it back to him and he was so impressed with the way that I had kind of applied myself in fixing it that he offered me a job straight away. And that's how I ended up working with him. And um, through working with Brian Eno, I was then introduced to lots of other really cool artists, Alex James from the Blur, um, Pet Shop Boys. I worked with them. Sam Brown, I worked with her. Lots and lots and lots of really cool artists. And then I kind of moved slightly over to work with Rollo Armstrong, who's in a band called Faithless. Then Rob Dugan, who, was doing the Matrix soundtrack. So I kind of worked on that a bit, film The Matrix. And then that was pretty amazing. And then I noticed that his sister was really good. And I thought, God, she's really good. And that's Dido. So I basically developed Dido, with programming and I got all my loops. You see, I have a specific sound when I'm working on music. People describe it as kind of synthy, loopy synthy melodic stuff with vocal effects and trippy vocal effects. That's kind of, in a nutshell, what I like to do, and that very much was what I was doing for Dido, and and I made two records with her, and then. I mean, I'm trying to summarize it as quick as possible, but then after that, I decided I wanted to do the same kind of thing with a band. So I went on the hunt for a kind of UK rock band, like a Brit band. Um, and I found a band called Keen who were kind of doing cock rock at the time. And then I decided that, you know what, this is going nowhere. It's completely rubbish, but the melodies are good. Why don't I approach them and get them to sign a development deal, sack the guitarist, put loops and really trippy synthy stuff on it, get the vocals sounding great, and it's going to be a hit. And that's obviously what I did do. And Hopes and Fear, I co-wrote and developed and produced most of Hopes and Fears and about 14 songs with them. So, so that's in a nutshell how I started off in music. And since then, I've been, it's just been the same kind of thing, developing artists, Phil Collins, Siobhan Donaghy. Recently, a guy called Mansoor who's really good huge in India, and I'm doing several bands that are completely unknown because I like to do bands. I like to make bands first record for several reasons. Number one, it's just more creative. You don't have a record company breathing down your throat, and you get to do what you want to do, and you get to mold them how you see them, and then obviously you get a much better deal. I get like an equal share with them. I don't get some stupid 6% from like Island Records, which is like worthless. So obviously that's good. And recently, obviously, I did English Teacher, who have just won the Mercury Award for Best New Album and the Rolling Stone Award for Best New Breakthrough Act, and have just been nominated for a Brit Award. So, that's in 2005. So, yeah, so I mean, I make music. I develop artists, and I produce records, and I write songs. But really, I think what your friend Ben was more interested in was for my crazy naughty stories about the CIA and stuff like that.
That's what got us here. But selfishly, I've got to
Yeah.
ask, out of all the people, there's quite a few in there I want to pick apart, but selfishly, I've got to ask
Yeah,
what
sure.
David Gilmour was like. My favorite guitar solo of all time, The Wall Part 2, of
Yeah.
all time. So what was he
Oh
like,
yeah,
if you
well
don't mind?
he's a very lovely guy. I've actually worked with two guys in Pink Floyd. Guy Pratt as well, who's the bassist. I know him for, I worked with him on a. You wouldn't believe what I worked with him on. It was so cheesy. I wonder if he'd mind if I told you. But
Is
there
he
was
credited on it?
yeah. It's like it was crazy. It was a crazy gig. I mean, he's a real character guy, right? I mean, he's married to I think he's married to Roger Waters's daughter. So like he's really in the family, as it were.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of that. Anyway, Guy wanted me to help him on a um on a remix of a track, which was the theme song for a children's TV animated show called Bob the Builder.
No fucking way. So the bass player for Pink
Yes.
Floyd is directly responsible for the theme song to Bob the Builder?
No, not even responsible for the theme song. Just a remix of it. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, so he
We
said
did
I
this
can do better.
remix.
So hang on,
Yeah, we
that got
did.
in his
Yeah.
crawl. That stuck in his crawl. Out of all the music that he could have
Yeah.
picked, remixed everything, the Bob the
Yeah,
Builder
no, no,
thing.
no, no, no. I mean, in like 1,000 quid's 1,000 quid, and if
Fair
if
enough.
the guy if those guys say, "Oh, he probably got 2.5 grand for it," I got 500 quid. We're all happy. It's just a day's work.
What did the
Uh,
now I want to hear the
you know,
AB. Like I want to hear how it was improved. What did you
yeah,
guys do? Did you remix? Did you add
yeah.
new
Well,
string, new instruments?
we had fun. You
You
know,
have to. You have to go in immediately saying, "Look, stop taking this seriously." Okay? We're going in there
yeah,
with weird toy instruments and shit.
yeah. We had fun.
That
The
sounds
day
incredible.
started with a lot of fun. Put it that way.
Well, yeah, I could see
Yeah, I
getting
mean,
in the right state.
these are the days when there was a music industry and there was money all over the place. People, would be paid I mean, I was paid to do things like, do the 2000 version of Je t'aime moi non plus by, Serge Gainsbourg and what's, uh, oh, I can't remember her name now, but it'll come to me in a minute.
It's all right.
But yeah, there were lots of there was lots of money with record companies, and they like to experiment with things by getting, there were there was a lot more money around in the music industry in those days, I have to say, and that translated into work for people like me, like programmers, producers, and I mean, just look at it this way: how many studios are there in London now, and how many studios were there in 1995?
Or a lot more 95. Folks are doing it at home now. I can make the same record you guys can down at Sugar Hill,
Yeah,
with Pro Tools in my house now. So
yeah.
industry standard, man,
So yeah, and you do it and you program it yourself, so you don't need me to do that. So, people like me and Guy, we kind of we didn't we don't have that same kind of level of work anymore, and so we've had to change the way that we work, and which is okay. That's what happens.
yeah, change or die, right? Isn't that what they say?
But yeah, in those days we were really having fun, and so I worked with Guy Pratt, same record. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Sorry, I missed that. I missed that.
Oh, I think we're laggy. It's just a little laggy, mate. No big deal.
Sorry,
It's just the
I
distance.
cut out for a bit.
That's okay. It's what it
Yeah,
is.
no, it was my fault. It was because I was moving it to drive around. Yeah, so I missed what you said.
I said you're doing a great job. I also said let's kick some of this music stuff to
Oh,
the afterthought, and why don't you and I get into the Lucy scale? Because I'm very curious about Lucy scale, and you letting our audience know what that is all about.
okay. So the Lucy scale is like this. It was really invented by 17th century horologist or clockmaker, really, called John Harrison. And he was a bona fide genius. A time when the most accurate clock that existed could stay within quarter of an hour of being in time at the end of the day, he created a clock that you could take on a boat all the way to the West Indies and back over months and months and months, and it would still be exactly right time when it got back. I mean, almost like atomic clock accurate. And he because of this, he won what was called the Queen's Prize. And the Queen's Prize was a prize which was set up by Queen Anne of Britain. And she said anyone who can find a workable solution for longitude is to be given like £100,000. And in he was like not a commoner, but he was not part of the hoi polloi of the royal court. So there was a great reluctance for any of the her what's it called courtesans, yes, courtesans, to the people in her court to accept his workable solution. So they basically delayed. And in that time, they were saying, oh, well, you can use an astrolabe, you can see the stars, you can tell where you are in longitude by looking at the stars and working that out. And yes, you can, but that's no good if it's got clouds in the sky. And if your life depends on it, you can't just say, oh, well, it's cloudy and then rock up on Portugal beach because you got it wrong. So basically, he actually wasn't given a prize because of all the kind of politics of it. But his son eventually was given the prize when they realized that he was right. I mean, this was a thing that lasted 50 years. However, here, this is where it kind of the story gets interesting. Interesting is quite a big word, but it changes slightly. Is that he spent most of his life was not to do with like just designing his clock. It's almost like he was so clever that he did that as just it was easy to him. What he really spent his life doing was designing what he called the true scale of music. And what it was for him is the true scale of music is what we call the Lucy scale. I can give you the actual percentages of the formula of how to make it, but that's quite boring and it's quite involved. But it's easy just to tell you that it where the normal scale uses the number two, the Lucy scale uses the number pi. So you have rather than whole notes and half notes, or tones and semitones, you have long notes and short notes. And so, whereas a normal scale goes do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do in a straight line, the Lucy scale seems to crawl up in a spiral, going like you're filling up a bottle of water with water. And you glug, 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 glug. It seems to go up exponentially. Now, because of this, we worked out a scaling system that was a 25 note, but it's an infinite scaling system, really. You can stop at any number you want. We chose 25 because it was just about workable. And these notes are not the existing notes, but halved because they it's nothing like that at all. It's to do with long notes and short notes. Some of the notes are very small. Some of the notes on the guitar are only 4 cents difference, and 4 cents is a very small amount of difference. But in a chord, if you play your third 4 cents sharper, it changes the chord from something kind of vaguely diminished into something majestic. It is the most amazing feeling to play with the Lucy scale. Now, I was really transfixed by the Lucy scale because I met somebody on a plane, I mean, on a train in Paris, a guy called Nick Clems. He told me all about it. He was programming DX7 synthesizers for Charles Lucy, and we had a few hours, and he told me all about it. And he said I should come, I was busking. I had a guitar. I was really, me and my cousin, we were on an interrating trip, and we had a few hours to kill. We sat down, we chat with Nick. He was, and we became friends. And I made, arrangements as soon as possible to go up to London and meet Charles Lucy. And I was the first person to get a guitar built in the Lucy scale in for left-handed people because I'm left-handed. Now, what happened then was I just basically, as any 20-year-old would do, I became obsessed with playing. I with loops, and I'm really into Frippertronics and Eno and loop pedals and making loop music with trippy kind of stuff. It seemed so much more engaging than the conventional scale because number one, you don't have to modulate within any key to be consonant. The conventional scale, you're limited to playing in a key. You have to, somebody has to say to you at the beginning of the song, oh, by the way, this is in G minor. Right. I always thought that was a bit weird. You know what I mean?
Well, it's the bass and the guitar, and the other guitar go, oh, we're going to be in that key. My thing was just stay in key. I don't care where you're at. Stay in key and stay in time and have fun.
Yeah. Well, in the Lucy scale, there is no key.
See, this is what's interesting. It sounds like holding a chord, right? But then only bending one of the strings out slightly, but to a specific degree. Because you're talking cents. I mean, that's a slight bend.
Yeah, no, they're all out.
So they're all being bent?
Yes.
But doesn't that just make it a different chord?
No, every single note is different apart from A at 440 hertz. It is a completely different scaling system. I can play the shape of a C, and it looks like a C, and it kind of sounds like a C, but it's a Lucy scale C. The whole 432 thing. I see it every day on a reel. Somebody talking about 432. It makes the hackles on the back of my neck stand up because it's complete bollocks. And the reason why it's complete rubbish is because if you want to hear everything in 432, you're perfectly at liberty to do so. And there's no conspiracy. You just have to put your tape on and slow the tape down by a factor of 440 over 432. You see? And then it will be tuned to 432. The whole will be tuned to 432. But my contention is that it's not about the overall tuning of the song, it's about the intervals of the notes. That's where the magic is. Because and I can, if you put a pin in that, I can explain what that magic is. Because let's just really reassert this point, and then we'll go after the magic of music. The another way to look at it is if you apply the Doppler effect, which is a scientific phenomenon whereby uh, a police car coming towards you will have a higher pitch, and then as it passes, it'll be at the right pitch, and then as it goes away, it'll be at a lower pitch. Okay, let's use that analogy. Now, let's say the police car is making a sound at 440 hertz. Okay, so the main proposition of the 432 crowd is that the music is only magical when he's 20 miles down the road. You get it now? Do you get it now? It's so it's so
I've thought about this.
ridiculous.
Here's why, James. I've thought about this because when I hold a note, okay, and yes, and I know that even between fret to fret on those intervals are not the intervals because Indian music has like 12
Yeah.
notes in between that. And so really you're
Yeah.
talking about that we're given a crayon box with 12 crayons in it, but really there are boxes of crayons with like 64 crayons in
Absolutely.
it. And we're
Yeah.
missing a
Yeah.
shitload of colors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what you
And
mean
it doesn't
that
matter. Yeah, and it doesn't matter what shade they're at or where you start the color at. You see that I think is more likely to be a kind of Rothschild conspiracy than anything else.
I don't
Because
disagree.
yeah, now here's where let's take the pin out of that little thing we put in earlier on, and I'll tell you something which is very understood. This is something which I've done a lifetime of research on, and I can direct you to music that you can hear it in. At the end of this thing, I'll give you a big old list of songs which will do this to you. I will be able to alter your consciousness with a very specific thing, and this my NDA with Dulceta has run out now, but I was commissioned by Dulceta to. I don't know if I probably can tell you what it was for, but yeah, I was. It's to do with mind control using brain wave alpha and theta states of consciousness, using music to engender enharmonic binaural entrainment and creating a third harmonic in the brain by having two different frequencies, one in each ear, which would be the which would create this alpha theta state of consciousness, which is like a dream state. And we were doing it to try and find ultimate ways of learning stuff quickly. And because of this research, I actually own an EEG machine and stuff like that. I was given it by Dulceta because we needed it for research to prove that we proved it worked. It's a proof of concept. It worked, And basically, what I wish I wish I had my Lucy scale guitar here. I could probably send somebody to go and get it, but it would mean okay. You can tune a guitar perfectly, and the C will ring true, and it'll be really nice. It'll be really, oh, that's all nice. And I always feel like it'll sound artificially sweetened because you made it so the guitar sounds bright in C. But you try playing a G minor then. Your G minor will sound rubbish because the adjustments you've made to make that C sound right, they don't work when you play a G minor. That is the that exposes bad physics, and the physics that it exposes is based on in this one very highly contentious point that everyone teaches this, but it's wrong. And that is the idea that sound travels in a wave. When you see a wave, you're only seeing actually the three-dimensional view of a moving vortex. The first person to understand that was John Harrison in the 17th century. And so because of this, he realized that to really get to it, he needed to use the relationship of a circumference to the radius of a circle, that being pi. In those days, they could only resolve it to about seven numbers, but he still managed to get a choir to sing in the tune and all this kind of stuff, shaving off a tuning forks, and he really got into it. But basically, when you use the Lucy scale, nothing is artificially sweetened. And this is where you get to the real honey, the real, the real, the real arc of the covenant of music is that when nothing is artificially sweetened, then nothing is in key or out of key, and therefore everything is as consonant as it is dissonant. And then, because of this, you have subharmonic beating. And it's in that subharmonic beating that your brain turns to jelly and you start tripping your tits off.
Outstandingly put.
Okay?
Outstandingly put. Okay. We're with you.
Do you see what I mean? Yeah, you with me there,
Is
right?
that where the brown
Because
note's found?
yeah, yeah. I mean, the brown note that's something slightly different. That's the note that can make you shit yourself because
Indeed.
it's so low that it resonates with your like your cavity in your tummy, and you evacuate yourself. Yeah, that's something slightly different. That's a sonic weapon, mate.
Dude, there was this guy. You've heard the story of it, right? The guy that made the organ. I forget his name, but he made an
Yeah,
organ.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then the
yeah,
pipe that he needed, the diameter of pipe that he needed, the only thing around was a sewer pipe. So he hooked that up.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
that was this, ironically, the sewer pipe is the thing that made people shit themselves. I thought it was great.
I can imagine that didn't go down well.
We're
in the
never coming here
in
again
the fucking church.
in the
Imagine
church, right? You want to get a bunch of atheists going,
everyone looking really uncomfortable.
You're talking about
Yeah,
trust issues, right?
but yeah, yeah. Imagine everyone in the whole everyone sitting on those horrible wooden pews, thinking, I feel kind of a bit uncomfortable. Don't play that note again.
What was in that
Yeah.
communion,
Okay.
you know?
So so imagine. So do you know what I mean about the idea that when two separate notes are beating, they create a kind of they create like a brainwave. they they uh, they create through subharmonic beating. You create, a state, an altered state of consciousness. It's the same as, I'll give you three other examples. Um, like Tibetan chanting. There's a lot of there are like lots of people chanting at the same time. Then none of them are chanting in at the same note. So you have a very rich collection of notes which are oscillating together in such a way that you have ultra ELF frequencies that trip people out. Number two, an Aeolian harp. Aeolian harps are the most amazing sounding things because when you have an Aeolian harp and you've tuned it properly, because I had an Aeolian harp and I spent about like at least 10 years and I wasn't even tuning it right. Then I had to find out actually how you have to tune it, and it was an eye opener when I actually tuned it right, the difference it made. But basically, you tune all the notes to be the same notes, and it's in that an Aeolian harp is a harp that is played by the wind. So every oscillation of the wind creates a kind of symphony of ripples through kind of the sound, and that kind of creates the same effect in your mind, the same what I would call the Lucy scale effect. Lennon, um, Lennon Honor used to make these films that was exposing how rap music was being used to degrade the honor, really funny choice of words, but the kind of honorableness of black people. And I felt I really agreed with him, and I was very happy for him to use my music in his films. And I noticed that in his films, it really, you could people really listened to every word, every nuance, because they were really there, they were really present. It's like when I was 18 and learning how to play the Lucy scale guitar, I used to play in the garden. And it was through that experience of playing with birds and talking with birds that I came up with the idea that whales, birds, and dolphins must communicate in intervals that you find in the Lucy scale. And it's because of that I found myself a year later in Hawaii being, talking with whales, 3 miles off the coast of Maui. And you'll find all about that in the messages that Ben seems. Is it called Brandon or Ben? Is it? I can't keep.
Ben, I'm Brandon. Yeah, Ben's
Yeah, yeah.
the guy
Ben,
who
Ben,
connected
Ben,
us.
Ben, Ben,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, Ben, Ben, he really, I think he really, he could really see that because there were psychological effects that were unforeseen about that. In the same way that the Lucy scale has the power to make people really focus on what you're saying, like hypnotize you, you really get into the zone when you listen to it, like a Tibetan chanting, or like with the Aeolian harp. But when you're talking with a whale and you're doing it for 3 weeks, like with hardly any time off, it can really, really affect you psychologically. And what happened for me was that I became very I became it was quite a dark place, because I kind of felt like I'd slowed down to their speed, and everyone else looked like they were just all, like buzzing around really fast. And yeah, I mean, the closest thing I can describe from it would be that it was like the worst form of depression that you could ever feel. You know, it was really depressing actually
Are the
talking to.
whales depressed, or were you just hanging out and
Oh,
slowing your biorhythm to them depressed? As if like a bee or a
yeah.
fly slowed down to us, it would just be like, oh, what's the point? It's too slow.
Yes, exactly that. It's exactly that because I believe that you perceive reality in direct synchronization to the speed of your heart.
Yeah, your
So
circadian rhythm, right?
yeah, so your heart as a blackbird goes like this. So when you go, you're actually like transmitting lots of information, and I could do that on a guitar. That was okay. But when you're talking with a whale, it's like their beat. I don't know. It's like once a minute or something. I mean, it's crazy. You're out there. You are seriously. You're out. You're in the abyss, mate.
Yeah.
And you feel it. I felt like so far down in the ocean and so deep in kind of their minds that it was a scary place to be, and it was profoundly saddening. Is the closest the word I could use. It was very sad. People glorify that stuff, but they've got no idea. If you actually really do talk to a whale, they're going to really, really, really depress you. I can tell you that.
Don't talk to whales. They're bummers. I would think it'd be like the manatees
Yeah,
that are
yeah,
bummers, you know? What do manatees
yeah.
have to say? Have you talked to any animals? And don't answer the manatee thing. That's silly. Have you talked to any animals that you would talk to again?
Yeah, I mean, I still talk to I still talk to blackbirds. I'm quite good at blackbird, because I live in the countryside and I'm surrounded by blackbirds, so I can hear when you get in tune with the Lucy scale. Not only do you hear the closest thing to you that's making, that's singing like a blackbird, let's say, but you hear a blackbird that might be half a mile away that is like an interloper into your space, and you hear blackbirds that are half a mile that way, and they all have different, they're all saying kind of different things. You tune into an alternative reality that is not. I mean, you honestly, I can. When we finished, I'll play you. I'll give you the links to the kind of music, and it's got Blackbird in it. I did this kind of thing for like 4 or 5 years. I went out into the forest and I played music to whale to blackbirds and also thrushes, lots of other birds, and I did a lot of that even before I went to Hawaii, so I was kind of used to that kind of thing. That's why I was picked to be the whale guy, you
It's
know.
amazing.
But but then the juicy part to it was that we came back to, there was a bit of a storm and we had to come back into Maui. I think it was Maui, or we went directly to Hawaii. But we had to come back to the birthday party of Dr. John Lilly, who's a fascinating guy who who, who he invented the scientifically communicating with dolphins using ketamine. You heard about this?
We
This
have,
is
yeah, we've
whole
talked
other
about him
sort.
on the show, yeah, quite a bit with his. He had some interesting methods.
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, it cost him. His wife died because of it. I mean, it's. I met him. I went out. I was at a party with him. Terence McKenna was there. I think I met Andre Shulgin. Do you know who he is?
Hmm.
Andre Shulgin. He invented MDMA.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
yeah.
I
They
was
were
a fan
the
of his work in my early 20s, late teens, but yeah,
when it was legal. I'm sure. Well, this
it
way
still
was.
wouldn't. It wouldn't. Nothing's been legal in Texas since I've been here, and but it was still fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Andrew Shogin invented it, and it was legal for a good 5 or 10 years afterwards. And he brought it to parties, and I mean, and it was quite good fun. I mean, it was the
And
real
so it
deal.
goes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good fun, that stuff. I mean, it was in a liquid form in those days. It came in a little bottle, 20
Hmm.
millimeter little bottle.
Yeah, a little vial.
Yeah, you didn't drink it. I mean, you didn't swallow a pill. It
We've
was,
done quite a few different versions of it. So I've done anytime I got LSD or MDMA, they came in a variety of ways. And so some
yeah,
of it was, yeah, liquid. Some of it was in tab form, but it had the liquid dripped on it, right?
yeah,
Different
yeah,
forms. So yeah,
yeah.
all of it fun.
So, yeah, it was really good fun. So, I went to this party and we had a great fun. I met John Lilly and we talked about, um, my mainly interspecies research projects and stuff. But his experiences were not as depressing as mine because dolphins have a similar heartbeat to
Yeah, 'cause their
humans.
biorhythm's similar, right?
Yeah, and so he couldn't understand the profound, emotional trouble of communicating with whales that I've had personally, and so yeah, we had a good time. Everything was cool. We came back next day with all our, all in flip flops with all our gear. Uh, no boat. Where's Captain Bob? No idea. We had no idea, and it was very scary. It was the boat sank was we're not quite sure how, and we're not quite sure who did it, but something happened to it, and then the next thing we knew, the whole thing was being taken over by the Office for, thank you very much, for Naval Intelligence.
Hmm.
So
And then
that's
that's
my
that,
story.
probably, huh? And then yeah, you probably don't hear any more about it, do you?
Yeah, well, I'm not read into that.
Yeah, it's a little classified at that point. Man,
Yeah,
so your work just got jacked after they allegedly sank your boat. Well, we'll just say this. You were working on something incredibly cool that was also
yeah,
depressing. So if you're going to study, guys, don't study whales. Study something at your
yeah,
circadian rhythm or maybe just above. Right? You don't want to
yeah,
also go too high. You don't want to study hummingbirds and just like, kill
yeah.
yourself. Just become a crack
Blow your
addict.
brain off. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, I would think
yeah,
so, right? But it's an interesting note, man. And I haven't thought about the correlation between those that study and the animals they study, the biorhythm relationship, but you can attest firsthand,
mm.
important. I do know that bees, if you study bees, allegedly those people
Yeah.
live a lot longer because of the vibration of the hive and the frequency that
Well,
they're
yeah,
probably doing the
and
Lucy scale, right?
yeah. Well, there's that. There's also a hive will be creating lots of different frequencies, and because of those lots of different frequencies, it will create subharmonic. What it's called subhum. The word I kept reaching for is called beating. It's when waves that are out or waves that are out of phase when they wobble together, they do what's called beating. It gets very technical. When you pluck a string, what you're actually observing is what's called the precession of a string that is uh, auto auto precessional resonance, and it's the string is not going up and down like this. It's actually going up and down and around, and that whole aroundness of it, if you could think of it like that, is the Lucy scale part of it.
Ah. See, that's interesting. And this is what I was thinking about whenever we were talking about the different variations between just even one fret. You've got about 12 different semitones within there, just in another musical classification. But what's interesting about that is you've got the degradation of the action itself. So you've got the decrease in kinetic energy, right? So as you hold something, it's going to degrade, which changes pitch. It's going to put you into a new classification. Plus, wherever you are, if you roll your finger a little bit, you've got
absolutely, yeah.
And we're not including bends and anything else. It's just single tone as long as you're holding as steady as you can, which I would think also your heart beating a little bit would oscillate how much pressure you're able to slightly put on the string. All of these things come into play. And this is this is where we get down to the conversation about the sides of a coin, right? Because James, how many sides of a coin are there?
Well, there's three sides of a coin.
Okay. And so which three? The first, back, and side? Front, back, and side?
The front, back, and the side is an infinitely long side. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean that's the physics of it, but I don't know what you can tell me.
Well, and then we have a friend, he's a quantum physicist, so he said, well, there's the fourth state, the state of potential, that if it's spinning, it's in a state of potential.
I love it.
I like that one too. I was like, damn, that's on the list, Doug. Good job. Doug Matsky, everybody. Ladies.
So out there, man.
Well, but then zoom in. Okay, now zoom into that coin. If you look on the outside of some coins, they have little ridges on them, don't they? Well, every time that ridge occurs, you go down, over, and in. That's three sides for each ridge. Okay, so and then if you look at any of the embossing work, if you go and zoom way in, that's lifted, which means it's got a side. It's got a shadow, it's got a side. And there's an edge right there. And if you follow that around, how many would you call edges? So I don't know how many edges are on a coin, honestly.
I mean, to take it to its fullest extent, you'd have to say that it has an infinite number of sides.
Just even with the potentiality alone. But to zoom in on it, because even then you'd zoom in and find that the creation of something to that scale left tooling marks that at another scale reveal even more edges. So you're right. I would think that it's an even infinity thing. Its scale, I think, is very interesting, meaning the size of something, but also the harmonic resonance of something.
Yeah, and the Lucy scale is an infinite scaling system, because when Charlie made the 25 note an octave scale, he was a bit cheesed off that about four of the notes were you had to put in a fret that only had a 4 cent or 8 cent difference, and he thought that just looked untidy. So then afterwards he started making 19 fretted guitars. Now that's Charlie and I mean, we've been friends for like a long time, and we're still friends. His son was born, I won't even go into that, but there's lots of other stories that are very interesting. But his 19 frets guitars, I don't really like them because they don't have that 25. They don't have those six other frets. You see, I think that the 19 fretted guitar is a compromise, but he counters that by saying, yes, you're right, it is a compromise, but so's the 25 note guitar compromise. In reality, we should have a completely fretted guitar, i.e., a non-fretted guitar.
I was going to ask you because I've had one, and it was tough, man. It was I know that spending time with it'd probably be awesome, but you think about upright basses or violins or something like this; those are all fretless.
Yeah, it's all by ear. But you see, they all do. You see, the thing is about upright. There is an eternal question you will get when you speak to virtuoso violinists and virtuoso double bass players and cellists. They will tell you, ask them, they will say, the fuck, well, they won't use that language, but
You're
they'll
welcome
say
to.
the fucking orchestra plays out of tune.
Because it's intonated, not because they're able to find this truth in
Yeah,
intonation, because they're not bound by a
they
fret.
have just yes, because they discovered the Lucy scale.
It's wide open range, wide open
Yeah,
spaces on that thing.
yeah, they know that it's like you're going to get really if you really want to trip out, you've got to play the Lucy scale, and they can play the Lucy scale.
Make you
They
trip
don't.
your balls
They
out. Is that what you said?
yeah. They don't want to play. Like on a little Casio keyboard, da da da, boop 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 boop. I mean, that's how they see it. It's like so restricting. It's so facile.
I love how music is crazy. Okay, I've been a musician since I was 15, and I'm self-taught, play by ear, all that stuff. But it's fascinating to me how music, in my mind, is infinite. Now, the only thing I will say is when I started on bass guitar. I got a 4-string bass, and I just needed more. And so I got to a guitar, and it was awesome. I've had a 12-string. 7-string never really rang with me, but I would like where I'm at, and it still seems infinite. It still seems like I could never do everything. And then here you are saying, you're only playing with like a sixth of your notes, mate, or even less than that. And so it's incredible how we can come across amazing things that we love. And then now there's even more to look forward to and incorporate in those things if we start looking at things a little bit more expanded.
Yeah, well, I would have never given this interview 20 years ago. This interview I'm doing this now because I'm over 50 years old, and I feel like it's now time to pass the torch on, because this torch of knowledge, I tell you, the people that are putting out the 432 bollocks, those same people are trying to get rid of this.
Well, you wouldn't have done this 50 years ago with us anyway, because the show's only 4 years old, but I hear what you're saying, and we are happy to grab this and say, guys, consider this, because it ties into cymatics, it ties into so many things. So
absolutely, yeah, and I do cymatics.
Let me, of course you do. Let's get into that in the back end here. So we are going to pop on over to the afterthought here.
Yeah.
What's that?
Or should we take a break? Let me take a break. I'll go and get my Lucy scale guitar so you can see it.
Dude, yes, get that damn guitar.
And I'll get the lights hit. And also, is there any way that I can share music into the chat in such a way that you can hear it?
Yes, and if you release the rights and stuff, or give me links, I can link it down below so that people can also enjoy it, Yes. And you and I will work that out at the break on how to do that.
Link? Yeah, the links will be... The link and you play it from your end. Yeah.
If you can send me the link, what I can do is I can link it down there, and people can play it whenever they want and come check out your shit. Does that sound good?
I'll give you a whole playlist of like trippy music. I'll give you 2 huge playlists of music that's my life's work, all made in the Lucy scale.
Outstanding. All right, guys, you hear that? Down there linked is the music that is his life's work down in the Lucy scale, not in whale songs, though. The ballads are depressing. Even the upbeat songs are depressing for whales.
There's no whale song stuff in there.
Got you.
And I have to, none of what I'm going to play you is in any way commercially successful at all. It's been a complete failure commercially.
Hey, say the words so far, and say the words in the Matrix's eyes of bullshit that we don't care about anyway for me, whenever you say that from now on. Okay, I'll tell you what, before we head to this afterthought, I want to, and so I will now, remind the audience that all the ways to find you and all the stuff that we talked about here are going to be located down in the show description. Definitely check the link down there to join us for this afterthought. It's going to be a banger. We've already got amazing things to talk about. We're still rolling here. So definitely click that link down there in the show description. Join your favorite show's afterthought here and support us, man. That's a great way to do it. Another thing I want to mention here is Sheldon Stehman down in the show description as well under Flash Glass Mosaic. He has been working on this incredibly cool piece, guys. Sounds like he's going to keep it going through the afterthought. And of course, We will link it whenever all of that comes about. So just want to thank these gentlemen and you for listening and hanging out with us, joining us for this afterthought here. But James, before we get to that, what gets you out of bed every single morning, brother?
Well, to be fair, I sometimes find it quite difficult to get out of bed. Yeah, I do sometimes. Sometimes find it difficult to get out of bed, but being a single dad to 3 kids, one has to do it. I got to take my kids to school. That's usually the first problem. That's the first motivator. Then it's a cup of coffee. That usually takes care of the actual drive. Then it's a cup of coffee that I have when I go to a cafe, and then by that time I'm ready to work. Yeah, but the actual moment of waking up, I usually think, oh, fucking shit. I'm sorry to be so depressing. That's the truth, though.